Namaste, welcome to this Ask Me Anything, volume 22. And I'm here with Karen. In a moment, we'll get to reading out what's been sent in. If you're new to this, you can leave, if you have a question or anything you want to ask, you can leave a comment under this video on YouTube. And when we record the next one, I'll read it out. Karen will read it out and we'll address an answer to it. So just so that everyone knows as well, the next one of these after this one, so volume 23 will be in the middle of February because I am going to India for the whole of January. So we're doing this one now. So if you leave a comment under this video or question, it won't be addressed until the middle of February there. So you can ask anything you like about awakening. There's no questions that are too elementary or anything like that. If it's an issue for yourself or something you're really, really curious about, then it's important to me as well. So just so you know, you can also ask questions if you join a live satsang, although the satsangs won't be running while I'm in India also. You can send a question in also via our website. If you look at helenhamilton.org and go to the satsang page on there, you can use a form to send in a question that will be read out anonymously if you prefer to do it that way, or you can't attend a live session too. So there are plenty of ways to get in touch if you do have a challenge. So let's get to it. Here we are, volume 22. So hi, Karen, whenever you're ready, if you'd like to get started.
Okay, hi, Helen. So the first question is from Santu, and he says, Dear Helen, it is clear to me that there's awareness that is aware of thoughts, body, and other phenomena. However, there's no insight to oneness or non-separation. As far as I know, there could be separate awarenesses as well. It does not seem obvious that there is only one awareness or consciousness. Could you comment on that? Thank you so much for everything.
So it's a very, very good thing to recognize, isn't it? That I am aware of awareness that's watching thoughts, etc. But it hasn't quite hit me yet that awareness is the awareness, that my awareness and the awareness are the same thing. And it was the same kind of feeling like a stumbling block for me along the path too. So just to look at that, and what we need to do then is to be able to prove to ourselves in our own experience that the awareness that we have, that we're just calling my awareness, I'm aware of thoughts, I'm aware of these words, the awareness is here right now, is infinite. So if we can prove that it doesn't stop anywhere, if it doesn't have any edges, awareness, then if it goes on forever, then there can only be one awareness, and that'll become very clear inside that my awareness is your awareness, is the awareness, is everyone's awareness. Everything is appearing inside that awareness. So for me, I would look at awareness. I would self-inquire and find this awareness that is not an object, it's not a thing. So when I ask myself what awareness is, when I inquire into this awareness, there's something here that is me, that isn't an object. It's purely insubstantial, intangible. And when I really looked at what that meant, I had to really investigate this a little bit. So you might need a little consistency here and persistency. Awareness is not an object. What does that mean? It doesn't have the properties of an object. An object has a size and a shape. It has a place where it is and then where it isn't. You could put an object somewhere inside a room. But if you think of the awareness itself, it's not an object. You can't really say it starts here and ends here. When I really examined awareness, I couldn't find any edge to it. So my awareness is here somewhere, wherever this body is. I can hear the thoughts going on in my head. I can be aware of my heartbeat, aware of these words even. And where does that awareness stop? When I really looked at this, I couldn't find any place in any direction from my body where it would stop. And actually began to realize my body is inside this awareness rather than awareness being just inside this body. And I would play with this when I was sat with people and across the other side of the room, like where does my awareness stop and their awareness start? And I couldn't really feel or find any way that my awareness could stop because it's not a thing. It would be like trying to slice the empty space here with a knife. You couldn't separate it into two. And the more I looked at this, it became clearer that I had been treating the self, the awareness, the consciousness, the presence like an object. I've been thinking it's my awareness. And in that statement, my awareness is the kind of hint that it's an object, that it belongs to me. It's a something that belongs to me and it's limited. But when I actually looked, couldn't find where it stops. You can try this right now, and anyone that's watching. Your awareness is here. It's here. You know, because you can answer this question. If I ask you, are you aware right now? Is it looking at a checking and see if awareness is present? Yes, awareness is here. It's hearing these words. It's looking at this image on the screen through your eyes. It's recognizing the meaning of these words. Awareness is here. But where is that here? Is that here a physical place? Or is it something much more diffuse and vast? So as you investigate like this, it's not a familiar way of thinking. Usually we stamp the properties of an object or a thing onto awareness. Go, right, I've recognized awareness, but it doesn't feel like it's the awareness. It doesn't feel any different, actually. It just feels like, well, I've just always had this awareness. And it might not feel any different until you start to investigate and realize it doesn't stop. Something that isn't a thing can't have any edges. Even if you put some big metal or concrete block in the middle of the awareness would be inside the block too, and right through and out the other side. There's nothing you can do to something that's intangible to stop it. You couldn't cut it, slice it, burn it. It's just completely impervious to anything like that. It's a weird thing, a weird way to really look at awareness if we're not used to it. But as you play with this and try to find where your awareness stops, is it only inside your body? Can it be inside or even outside if it's not a thing? Because inside and outside are definitions that belong to objects. But awareness isn't an object. It's totally subjective. It's total experiencing. And there's no object or someone who's experiencing. There's just this, whatever this is sentient and awareness. So have a look and see where awareness is. When I ask people that, they go, well, it's here. And then if I can try and pin them down a bit with that and say, well, where is here? It's not something you can point. You can't say it's over here, over there, over here, here. It's not a thing that you could point to in a way, is it? You'd have to say it's kind of everywhere. And as you really look at awareness in that way, the thought, you can notice a thought as an object, but the awareness of it isn't an object. And because of that, it doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't have any edges. It goes on forever in all directions, above, below, north, east, south, west, always being here. Could never go anywhere because it is everywhere. But we have to begin to really stretch the way we think about it, because we think that we impose these qualities, for want of a better word, of objects onto it. If it's not an object and it is here, it must be everywhere. So really try and play with this. Where does your awareness stop? If there's another human body 6 feet away from you, where does your awareness stop and theirs start? Can you even have two awarenesses if it isn't actually a thing? Where would this diffuse nothingness stop and theirs start? Is that even a possibility? Or is it just there's two bodies appearing in the same awareness? or 8 billion bodies, or whatever we want to call, whatever the number is now of human bodies. So one beingness, one awareness, and all these objects appearing inside it. And awareness is not an object. We give it subtle qualities of an object, but if we're really honest, we have to let go of even that, and then it becomes obvious and clear. There is only one awareness, and it's expressing itself through all of these forms. So have a play with that and see where you get to with that. Thanks, Karen.
So the next question is from Marie. Thank you so much, Helen. That really helped me understand the whole simulation theory. I couldn't get my head around it. I feel the exact same way about physics, by the way. So do you think that knowing this, that we could eventually transcend physical pain or suffering? Thank you so much for all your amazing content. And my life has changed as a direct result of this channel.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And we can transcend physical pain and suffering, absolutely. And first of all, it has to be recognized what transcending that means. Let's be clear about what we mean when we say transcend. So suffering is different than physical pain. Let's start with that. So someone can be having physical pain but not suffering at the same time, and those are very different things. Usually human beings lump them together. But physical pain is a stimuli that's going on in the body. And the suffering is coming from resisting that. So resistance to what is suffering. So it's possible to be in physical pain but not suffering from it. And we know this because we could take a pain pill, or if we were to have an anesthetic, the suffering would stop from that pain. When you go to the dentist and you get the injection, you must still be in pain, but the messages aren't getting to the brain. So it's only the resistance of that pain that is suffering. So even on a normal human level, we can detach the suffering from the physical pain if we don't resist the pain. How do we resist physical pain? Usually by thinking about it, being scared of it. If we can just experience it and just be with that pain, it's quite amazing how much pain we can feel. And even with that going on, peace would still be there, even joy, eventually even love and bliss. And when we don't resist that pain, usually our body is telling us some message that it needs us to hear. It's telling us some message that we haven't been able to hear emotionally or mentally in terms of beliefs. So when we investigate into the pain and see what it wants to show us, usually there is some emotion and a belief, a story behind that emotion that we haven't come to fully recognize. And our body is telling us there's something here you need to look at, something that you're not really willing to see. And usually, just like with physical pain, we don't really want to feel our emotions because as a separate self that we thought we were, those emotions, when we've tried to feel them, they've overwhelmed us because we thought we were a someone. And they, no matter how much we feel them, they don't go away. They just keep coming and coming. So as our awakening deepens, we can realize that we're not that separate being. We're not that thought-constructed self. And we can look at the stories then behind the emotion. So what does fear want to tell us? What does anger say to us? What does shame say? And our body is telling us physical evidence that there is an emotional issue that needs looking at, and that emotion is telling us there's a belief, a story behind there. So with a willingness to look at things on the mental and emotional level, our body can begin to heal because it's not having to give us the message. And we could even say that's the purpose of having a body, a physical incarnation, is that we can begin to see the beliefs and the things stuck in our consciousness that we wouldn't really be aware of without the physical body, so we wouldn't know they were there. It's only when our experience doesn't flow so well, we know there's something that needs looking at in that process. So in a second way, we can also transcend physical suffering and pain in that way, because our body will begin to heal from that. And eventually, an awakened being reaches a willingness where they're kind of always willing to look at anything, even if they're not clear on what that is that needs looking at. There's always a willingness to see. And that willingness to see protects against physical suffering. It's very hard for an awakened being to have any kind of physical suffering going on for any length of time at all, because there's a willingness to look at these things on a level of belief and on the level of emotion. And even if we look at our basic human education, we're never taught how to express emotion, how to just be with it without resisting it again, same as a physical pain. So perhaps the awakened being has learned to be with their emotions completely for as long as it takes, without any desire to get rid of that thing, because there's no labeling of that emotion as good or bad, wanted or not wanted. From the infinite awareness, everything that we feel or think is just our experience is treated with the same equanimity. It's just that some sensations we feel might be more useful to help us look at something deeper inside. So I hope that answers that question. And if there's a little tweak needed on that, just feel free to write back in. Thanks, Karen.
This is a comment from Shakti. She says, "Thank you so much, Helen. Soul food goodness. I'm glad I have this as an outlet to ask questions. Many blessings to you and all."
Thank you, and so good. So glad that you like it. And as I was saying before, there are so many ways to get in touch and ask questions through the website and the Satsangs, going to helenhamilton.org. There's also sanghas, which are groups that are run by students for students, just to get support and all of that too. You can find those on the Sangha calendar on the website, SANGHA calendar, and you can have a look at that. They're going on in different time zones around the world, and there's plenty of ways to just plug in and get support, because we can often need that on this journey, can't we? Thanks, Karen.
This is a comment from Sentu. "Thank you, Oneness. Asking the questions, voicing the questions, answering the questions, listening, answers, feeling connected."
Beautiful. Oneness playing us all these different ways, isn't it? Amazing how it creates these bodies to discuss itself and get to know itself. Thank you, Karen.
This is from SJ. "Helen, thank you for answering my question. I understood that there are no separate individuals doing. So my question was specifically attempting to drill down to see if oneness, which is all there is, was doing. If I understand you properly, I think your answer was yes. Oneness both watches and intelligently guides the unfolding manifestation of every appearance of itself, which can become self-aware, according to its will. So maybe it's like me redirecting a stream from a high level. And as a result, various whirlpools form. The more complex whirlpools become self-aware and ask if they are doing."
That's very profound, very profound. And yeah, that infinite awareness, whatever we want to call itself, in the manifestation, it has this drive to understand itself, experience itself, become self-aware, as you said. And that gives the illusion or the appearance of doing something. It might be drawn towards spiritual practice and all of that. And it gives the illusion of doing, but really it isn't. So its collective infinite will, so to speak, is to move towards ever more clarity and understanding itself. And that will in action gives the sense of an illusion of a human being that's doing some spiritual practice or resisting doing spiritual practice, as if that human being has that free will to choose. So there's you could say also a universal doing, or a universe being done, whichever one of those. But I like the whirlpool analogy. Some of them are just very shallow, some of them are very complex, and it gives a real appearance of a sentient being doing their own thing. But as you said, it's not so. And in that, there's a deep safety and satisfaction that anything that any being is doing is being done by the infinite intelligence rather than a separate being. And in that, for me, there's a relaxation. I can't really get that wrong. If what my will is the self's will, same, if they're one and the same, then my drive towards awakening must be God's drive towards the recognition of itself, the self wanting to understand itself. And in that, there was an assurance of success, and it took all the ifs and the what ifs and the buts out of it. So yeah, I think we're on the same page from what you've said. But you can always write back in again, and we can take it further. Beautiful. Thanks, Karen.
This is from Grace. Hello, Helen. If there is no doer, then how does free will work? Also, in this human experience, is the soul always only the observer, even in the awakened state, and never the doer? Thank you so much for always answering our questions. It is deeply appreciated.
Yes, so free will, we don't have the free will that we think as a separate being. The imaginary separate being, separate self, thinks that it's doing everything. It's choosing its thoughts, it's deciding its decisions, and that it's doing its actions. So if I think I am this mind and body, I'm going to think I'm responsible for everything that's going on in this mind and body. And if my body does an action that leads to the wrong or undesired result, as far as my mind is concerned, at least, I will take ownership of that as well. I would think I've done the wrong thing. I've made the wrong choice. And of course, the opposite of that is true. If I think I've made the right decision, I'll be elated. If I made the wrong decision, I might be anything from fearful to angry to ashamed, all of that. But really, the awareness first, the infinite awareness first individuates itself, not separates itself. It has individual infinite expressions as a soul. None of those are separate to each other. They're like waves on the ocean surface, all of these souls. Or you could say there's one soul expressing itself in infinite number of ways, but that is always just being, just observing. If the soul acts at all, it is by intention, and intention arises, and the manifestation moves accordingly. So the intention at the level of thought and desire is evidence of something coming into physical manifestation too. So the soul kind of has a free will in that way. It has a free will of what intention arises, but even that intention is determined by what's already in manifestation too. It's like a feedback loop. So if you're to put it into concrete example, if you're sitting around people with lots of money, an intention might arise within you to have more money, more than what you need, etc. So it's the intention in you, in the soul, and in the manifestation is one, and what's already shown up is one and the same thing. So the free will that we do have then is what we put our attention upon. So we're sitting in that group with this group of fairly affluent beings. We could sit there and feel jealous that we don't have what they have. And we could separate ourselves in our thoughts. And we could focus on what we don't want, which is already what we're experiencing. Or we can focus on what we do want, on the intention that's just being launched, the desire that's being felt. That's really the only free will we have. The free will of where to put our attention. Of course, eventually, even further back than that, the only free will is where to put my attention on what's real, the infinite awareness that I really am, that this parent soul arises out of. Or do I put my attention on the thought constructed separate sense of self that's terrified that it's doing the wrong thing, or desperately trying to find out what the right thing is to move towards what it wants? So the free will is not choice of actions, words, or thoughts, because they emerge directly from our level of understanding of ourself. The only free will we have is where we place our attention as human beings. And the more our attention is what's on what's real, the more the thoughts, words, and actions will be what we would have wanted to choose anyway, and in alignment with what's best for us and everyone else. So hope that kind of puts it into a better perspective. And if you want me to go over any bits of that again, please just ask, and we can clarify. Thanks, Karen.
The next question is from Linda. Thank you so much for offering your awakening so freely and compassionately. If I'm not actually an entity, what reincarnates? Also, if illness is a reflection of mistaken beliefs, why do infants and innocent children suffer illness, abuse, and tragedy?
So I might ask you to read that second bit again, Karen, in a moment. So the first one was what reincarnates, is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no separate self, there is an individual rather than a separate self, as we were just talking about in a previous question and answer. If you haven't listened to that, maybe go back and listen. If you can think of the infinite self as the ocean, for an analogy, and each individual or soul is like a wave on the ocean surface, still made of the ocean, still connected to the ocean and connected to all the other waves, but unique in its expression and appearance. Except the soul here is a wave that never, it only ever gets bigger and more expansive. It never, in the analogy in the ocean, the wave rises up and then recedes back. But every analogy has its limit. So individual does not mean separate. So the soul is individual and unique, and it is learning and growing through all the experiences it has and becoming more and more aware of its source as the infinite awareness, as the I am the ocean, is what it's coming to realize. The way it does that is by drawing to it unconsciously at first a human body and experience, and using that because it's still, when it leaves its previous body, so it doesn't incarnate. It's not that it is having lifetimes. It's drawing to itself multiple human bodies, living in them for a while, then discarding it, and then another one. Because when it leaves that previous body, it hasn't managed to fulfill its deepest desires. It has those desires latent within the soul, within the, you could also call it the astral form, whatever you want to call that. And usually those desires are very simple, but very potent. Desire to feel safe, desire to feel loved, and a desire to feel accepted, some kind of variation on those themes. Desire to feel free, unlimited. And while it thinks in its next human body, it thinks that it identifies with the body. It forgets everything it knew while it was just an energy form. Temporarily, this amnesia comes over, in thoughts at least. And it begins to believe it's a separate being, separate to everything and everyone else. And it wants to feel safe because of that. A desire to feel safe arises only because it thinks it's unsafe in the first place. A desire to feel loved arises only because it thinks it's not lovable or not loved, or that it's split away from the infinite love that it really is, the infinite awareness. So that's what reincarnates is. Reincarnation is just the soul's decision to look through another body-mind vehicle for a while, like dropping off one car because you've leased it long enough, and you go look around the lot and choose a new car. You have a different experience in that new car, don't you, than you did in the previous one. Nothing wrong with the old one, but you can learn a bit more about yourself and go different places and experience different things in this new car. And it can take you as far as it goes. Eventually, you're going to realize, I am not this car because I can get out of it. And of course, in this lifetime, you're coming to realize I am not this car, even while you're still driving it. So that whatever happens for the rest of forever, however many more cars you rent or lease, you're never going to forget you're the one using it, you're not dependent upon it. You're not going to have this terror, if I crash my car, I'm gone. Or if this body dies, I'm done for. There's not going to be that horrible fear. You realize who you really are. And I'm expression of the infinite self, the infinite love. I am love. I don't need to find love. And I am safe because I will never die. I've never been born, all of that. So could you just read this second bit again for me? Thanks, Karen.
Sure. Also, if illness is a reflection of mistaken beliefs, why do infants and innocent children suffer illness, abuse, and tragedy?
Right. So yeah. So they look like infants in those bodies. They look like babies and young children. But the soul is very, very old, very timeless. And just because they're beginning this particular lifetime in that physical body, they've come into this lifetime with these unfulfilled desires. If someone has a desire to feel safe, one of my very first memories was of feeling extraordinarily unsafe. And that was the background theme of my whole life because I didn't feel safe. And right from the get-go, these bodies might be new, but the desires are as old as time, and the infinite self grabs another body so that it can try to finally transcend that. And it will do that by trying to feel safe over and over and over, an infinite number of ways, trying to find the right family, the right job, the right income, eventually even through finding the right partner, eventually through religion, through awakening. If I just wake up enough, I'll be safe. I'll feel safer, etc. So there are the infant bodies, but these souls have come into this lifetime with these desires latent within them. And that's why sometimes even in the womb, even from the very first breath, these karmic patterns, latent tendencies, whatever you want to call them, are playing themselves out. And then we have a chance to transcend them finally. We do that by trying to fulfill them in every external way we can and failing, and then finally looking inwardly. So tiny, tiny bodies, but age-old desires that come with that incarnation. In fact, they wouldn't be a physical incarnation unless they were desires to call that incarnation forth. If the soul tends to get lost in the body and think it is the body, it's going to need a physical body to try to fulfill its desires. That's what it thinks anyway. So hope that helps. Thanks, Karen.
Lori sends in a comment, wonderful, with a heart emoji.
Thank you.
The next question is from Matt. Hi, Helen. Thanks so much for everything you do. Do you think these teachings would be beneficial for someone with OCD tendencies and severe anxiety?
Absolutely, yeah. There are many students already in the sangha that have OCD and severe anxiety, people with challenges like PTSD, all of that. The teachings will be useful for anyone that wants them. That's the bottom line. If someone is not ready to face extreme fear or something like that through anxiety that they're feeling, then they won't be useful. So rather than whatever that challenges that person has going on for them, more important to me is are they ready to really look at that? And of course, if they are, that's great. But yeah, they would. There are many beings in the Sangha already that have very similar situations and challenges like that. So yes, thanks, Karen.
This question is from our beautiful Gabriel. Hi, Helen. I've heard you sometimes asking this question during satsang. What does it really mean that there's no separate being? Could you please explain why this question was important on your own path? Love you.
Thank you. Love you too. For me, this became the compass point, the north I was heading to. It was, have I really understood what it means? If there's no separate self, then all of the problems, challenges, and questions and everything that belong to that seeming separate self finally must be solved in that seeing. So for a long time, it's like, I understand awareness is formless and I am infinite, but how do I live like that? Or how do I stop forgetting and stay only in a place of remembering? How do I come to transcend my karmic patterns? On and on these questions go. And those are all valid challenges, but do they apply if there is no separate self? And for me, I had to really, this felt like a sword that was just going to chop through the illusion. Is this a problem for the infinite self? Is this a concern for that which is already free and everywhere? And if there is no separate self, do I have to undo the effects of that separate self, its karmic patterns? It was a huge one for me. For a long time, even after I'd seen there's no separate self, I was still believing in the effects of that separate self, the effects of feeling fear on my bank account, the effects of feeling anger in my shoulder, and the way the body and mind and my life and my experience was still reflecting. It hadn't hit me fully that if there is no separate being, then there is nothing to undo or to fix or to transcend even. And every time I looked at that, I had a feeling that I got it, but not really. It hadn't really hit me, like really hit me, as in that wipes everything off the board. That wipes away. And a lot of that was my unwillingness to admit, because I thought at this point I was getting pretty good at meditation, pretty good at self-inquiry, pretty great with contemplation. I could meditate even in a busy airport with my eyes open. I was pretty accomplished. But that had to I had to really examine all my motivations like that. Have I really ever got anywhere then? Am I really getting accomplished at these practices? And all these kind of very subtle motivations of a separate self, the good ones that felt good, I had to let all of that go too. What are you trying to achieve and why? And do you need to? As the infinite self, if there's only one being, one thing that's everywhere, that has to also extend to everything we're trying to get, doesn't exist outside of you. Everything we're trying to get rid of, like shame, fear. And I think for me, that was why the unwillingness was there. It was like life was asking me to live without any reference point at all. And to not be as someone who's almost there, or someone who's really there, who's really got it now, really sort of advanced in, getting this, living as this. And it was very subtle self-definition, but whenever I came back to any stickiness at all, it was always because I hadn't really fully let it hit me what it means that I'm not a separate being, that I am already and have always been the infinite self, and that anything else is a pure work of fiction in my mind. If you let that hit you, it changes everything inside. And that is terrifying to the mind for a large amount of time, because all of our identity is based at this point usually on the seeker. How far we're getting, how many patterns we've got left to get rid of, how good we are at meditation, how much deeper my meditation was than last time, or how more frustrated it was, and where's the bliss gone? It was there and now it's gone again. All of this has to go. And this closing down sale with this realization of there is only the infinite self. Have I really understood what it means? Have I really got it? That that's all there ever was? If I never, ever split away from God in the first place, then all there is God. Everything I perceive as separate and outside of me also vanishes in, at least in my it doesn't literally vanish from out here, but it vanishes in my concepts. And for me, there was a large amount of, as much as I wanted to be free like that, a large amount of unwillingness to see that fully and clearly. And it had to become challenging before I really found that willingness to let go. So just looking at that within yourself and saying, well, what am I still trying to achieve here? Am I living as the infinite self, or as someone who's almost there? Or as someone who's living like that most of the time, but not in that situation with that person, or when that thing happens? Can that be true if there's only the infinite self already? What effects of the separate self are you still trying to fix and clear up? And is that a valid way to spend our time? Can you clear up the effects of a ghost that was never there? Not so much. And yet we all do it for a very, very long time. So I hope that kind of rouses something inside that kind of pokes at some little corners where we might be holding on to some self-identity. Thanks, Karen, when you're ready.
The next question is from Sky. Thank you, Helen. What is it when I experience the thought that I am not curious enough for this path? When I believe the thought that I don't feel good enough because I really want to meditate or inquire on my own. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Beth.
So it's probably just a little unworthiness popping up. I don't think I've ever met anyone who felt that they were doing, at least initially, a good enough job of, mastering meditation or self-inquiry, contemplation. And most people I meet feel that they're not doing anywhere near enough in terms of practice and in terms of deepening their devotion to truth. And that is, it's a very common thing. I had the same feeling myself. I'm not anywhere near enough devoted to wake up. And I'm sure if I was living with the Buddha, I would feel very, very ashamed that, how much devotion he has compared to how much I have right now, etc. But it's really more helpful to realize we might not be seeing ourselves clearly in that. The very fact that you're asking this kind of question here and this kind of video and this kind of teaching shows me you have more than enough devotion, more than enough willingness, more than enough interest in waking up, and more than enough courage to do whatever it takes to look at whatever needs to be looked at. There'd be no way you would even ask this kind of question if you didn't have what it takes already. So I hope that gives you some kind of clarity in that, some kind of perspective. Perhaps we don't see ourselves very clearly at all in this area. I know I didn't for a long time. Even after awakening was really starting to deepen for me, I still didn't see it clearly. Still thought I needed to do more. And it was only when my life actually started to change in the external reflection of what I was seeing in here that it started to dawn on me that I might not be seeing myself clearly, actually. I might be totally still living in an idea of where I am rather than actually looking at where I am. So I have no doubt anyone that listens to any teaching of this level, this directness, their path is awakening. The life is for awakening. And it's okay to enjoy some time outside of the path. It's okay to have some fun, to have some downtime. If there's one thing I wish I'd done differently, well, there's many things I wish I'd done differently, so to speak, but one of them would be to just relax more, chill out more, take some time and have fun, do something completely non-related to this. I used to go everywhere with at least 3 books in my bag, just in case I had 5 minutes. I would miss the most beautiful moments because I was always I couldn't spend time with my family really because I was always in my head trying to figure out when was the soonest I could leave and get back to reading my books and meditation, and large extent missing out on life completely in this desperate attempt to find the truth. And then I realized this is the truth. This is life. The truth, same thing. So all of this is to say, I have no worries about your commitment at all. And hopefully this helps you to relax a bit more into that. You wouldn't be watching something like this. You would be watching something else. You'd be not even interested in this kind of channel. So thank you, Karen.
And this is a comment from Johnny. Namaste. Marking for re-listening, individual, but not separate. Dig the etymology. Thanks, Helen.
I'm glad it helped, because it individual and not separate for me took me a while to figure out the difference between the two. So thanks, Karen.
This is a question from Lily. Hello, I'm new to the practice and I'm full of concepts and ideas. I've just started to self-inquire. I have a question about trauma. I've been doing therapy and all of that for years, and I'm still releasing with breathwork practices. I'm talking about sexual abuse since childhood and abuse for a whole life, almost. I know I'm not a victim, and I consider myself actually very lucky. Not many with my past have decided to continue to try to fully experience this, that I know deep in my heart is an amazing gift. I would love to know if you have any advice, any help you could provide to deal with it. Trauma applied to meditation. How should I relate to the trauma, to the unconscious fear, disgust, pain, shame, love, anger, desperation, unbearableness? I'm starting to feel them and let myself experience them. Have you got any advice on this topic? How can I disidentify myself from this apparently so profound experience that involved my mind and body on such a deep level? How can I ignore the feelings and the thought without repressing them, and yet not feeling drawn into them? I'm probably making the wrong questions from a narrow point of view, but I would highly appreciate it if you could consider talking about this topic that is often avoided in spirituality. Thank you.
Absolutely, and experienced something similar as a teenager. So it was a part of my own path as well. So we want to be present to the emotions that come up around whatever's going to come up, whatever has happened in our life. They'll be unresolved, at least until awakening. There'll be unresolved emotions and beliefs that those experiences are a reflection of. We are the infinite self, which is infinitely powerful. When that infinite self believes itself to be a separate being, it looks through certain ideas that it gathers, like, I'm not safe, I can't get what I want, I'm not good enough. And it looks through those beliefs and experiences them completely as its reflection, as its life. So we all have these experiences that we come to awakening with some kind of emotional trauma and things that we need to feel. So meditation in itself, I'd suggest a two-pronged approach. Meditation itself is the first way, and you're doing that. It's just a willingness to feel the emotion. And meditation is being with what is. So there's plenty of guided meditations on this channel. If you look on the playlist, there's a guided meditation playlist on there. And all of those focus on one particular way of recognizing who we really are and using what's coming up in front of us. So if I feel an emotion coming up, I can then use that to notice that I am the awareness of it. There's awareness of it. Or that if a thought's being spoken in my mind, that I am the silence that is listening to this. So all those guided meditations would be great to use with this. So we're not ignoring the phenomena, the emotions, the memories, the thoughts, whatever comes up during the resistance even to those emotions. We're just also not telling stories about them as well. For most of us, if we meet an intense emotion in our daily life or in our meditation, we go into telling stories about it. So as an expert storyteller about fear, I knew how long it was going to last each time. I knew how challenging it was going to be to deal with. I knew exactly what I did last time that worked to get rid of it. I knew exactly what wouldn't work anymore that I'd tried, that did work at certain points. I knew what parts of my life I could continue functioning in with this fear and what parts I would be incapacitated. I knew that it would interrupt I knew all these things about the fear, and this is just fear. There was also many other stories for other emotions. So for me, being present to this fear was a willingness to actually let these stories go and experience the fear on its own. The biggest story, of course, was if I really just feel this, it's going to overwhelm me. I won't be able to deal with it. So in my willingness to be with what is, I was willing to just feel this. And it actually didn't overwhelm me from there. Actually, fear was intense sometimes, flooding the system. But there was peace with it too, because I wasn't telling any story. It was cushioned in this peace, like this peace was just kind of holding the body and the fear. And even a couple of times there was real joy and bliss and peace and fear at the same time, with a willingness to just be with it. And I realized something quite startling, that I'd never actually met fear before. I'd only experienced my stories about fear. And that was really life-changing for me. And what happens when I actually just feel it without knowing how long it's going to last, or feeling it so that it goes away, which is the other spiritual thing we do. You know, I'll be with this and then hopefully it will just leave. Okay, like what happens if I just accept this is here without needing it to leave even? That is possible, and deeply possible if we're not telling stories, because there's peace. Usually we only want fear to go away so that we can get back to peace, or anger or shame or whatever it is. So if we're already peaceful, then there's a capacity to be with that heavy emotion, whether that's a traumatic memory that comes with it or whatever, and to not tell stories around it, to just feel it in its richness, its fullness, as an intense set of stimuli inside us, perhaps. So that would be the first thing, is just to and it sounds like you're well on your way with that. Second thing is to really question in self-inquiry. And again, there's a self-inquiry playlist with many different ways to do self-inquiry. Find, I suggest looking at the one that fits you best. Self-inquiry is just questioning, inquiry into what actually am I? And we might know intellectually, I'm not the person that's been through all of these things. These didn't happen to me, they happened to the idea of me. But to actually experience that you can't find that person when you look, it really begins to undo your capacity to believe that these stories happened to you. Yes, of course, some things happen to your body. We're not trying to cover that up or ignore it at all. We're actually being very present with that. We're not adding to the trauma by believing it happened to me. My body was in certain situations and places. And again, I'm speaking from my own experience here, that reflected my lack of feeling safe, my conviction that I am not safe, and my conviction that I can't stand up for myself, and all of those things. And of course, we all have our own version of what those experiences looked like. You shared some of yours here. But as I began to see, I can't find that separate self. It does not exist. It began to become clear that it never existed in the way that I thought. And it went right back through my history then, and kind of cushioned me from the impact of all of these events that I thought, physical, financial, sexual, everything, that I thought that had happened to me, because that's where the real suffering is. When I realized that no other being can actually harm me, only my thoughts that other beings exist can harm me, then I'll find my body rather impossible. It's impossible for my body to be in the vicinity of other beings that intend me harm, or other body mind vehicles, because there aren't any other beings. That's fundamental shift then. And in fact, the opposite begins to happen. I find myself surrounded by those that love and care for me and want the best for me. So I'd suggest this two-pronged approach of meditation and self-inquiry, really seeing the being that these things happen to isn't who we thought. And for me, it was only possible there to fully and finally heal that trauma from the separate self's perspective, who I thought I was. I could never really fully be with that, because fully being with it meant facing what I thought happened to me. So hope that helps. But of course, do write back in if you need more guidance on that. Thanks, Karen.
The next question is from Major. How do we go from recognizing the eternal moment to calling it what we are? I recognize it, but I can't say it is what I am. Maybe it has nothing to do with me.
That's a very good question. And I would suggest some self-inquiry for that. And as I was just saying, there's a self-inquiry playlist here on the YouTube channel, and have a go with those. For me, there was very much a me at first and this present moment, or me and the silence, stillness, consciousness, presence, whatever we're calling it. There was very much a sense of me running around inside this moment. And it's funny now, but it wasn't at the time at all. A me who's trying to stay in this present moment. And that's pretty much impossible. So the only way out of that was for me to see this present moment is here. That much is clear. You can notice that right now, right? This moment is this moment. It's undeniable. Whatever it is, I don't know, but it's definitely here. So the weaker link in the chain is, who is this I that seems to have a relationship with this present moment? When I really looked for that I could not find it. Shocking. It was absolutely shocking. Who is it that's living in this now moment? And I couldn't find any entity at all. There was only empty no-thingness that showed up as me. There was not an object or a person or a separate being called Helen when I looked. When I really looked, there was a body, there were thoughts, there were emotions, but to whom they belonged, I could not find anything, couldn't find anything or anyone. And as I looked and didn't find, looked and didn't find, looked and didn't find, became clearer and clearer. I did this over and over again. You can do it right now. Try and find the you that's thinking about this present moment. It's not there. A body, thoughts and emotions are not evidence of a you, because they will all go. Who is it that says my mind, my thoughts, my body? Who is it that says I'm noticing this present moment? Can you find an object, a someone that's sitting inside this present moment? When you really look, it's absent. Most we can say is there's a body here and something is using this body to speak right now, but it isn't a thing. It's not a person. So as I looked and didn't find a someone, looked again and again and kept not finding, became more and more obvious there never was. That is the original lie that I've told myself. Somehow I split away from this that is and went on my own merry way. And now it's only now that I'm suffering as a separate being that I'm trying to find my way home. What if that all is a utter work of fiction? And I know you know that, of course, but to actually experience not being able to find the entity that our whole life has been based upon, even our awakening, for me, it was wondrous and terrifying at the same time that I have been on this path for 25 years, and I had to finally go, well, that's not true, actually. Thought has been on this path for 25 years. I've just always been here and now and this, never anything different. So self-inquiry is the most direct way to actually experience you are this moment, to kind of to bring your definition of yourself into the same as this moment, and if we don't do that, we can be using all of our spiritual practice, our meditation, etc., to verify I am someone who can really come to recognize, whether we realize it or not. And I did that for a good long while, to subtly sustain the sense of separation from this moment. So looking and not finding, it's a very direct thing to do, but it does kill your capacity to suffer. You still get to be you, the individual expression of you, what you like to eat, movies you like, all of that stays the same. You just can't quite believe you're going to end when the body ends anymore. What a relief. So have a go and see where you get to with that. Thanks, Karen.
The next question is from Michael. When you do the next question session, can you speak again or direct where it was you spoke about going to the source for love instead of external that was mentioned in a question on here? Thank you.
So yeah, just trying to remember. I think it was we're talking about looking for love in external ways. I can't remember what I said or where, but as a general overview, most of us are looking for love from our relationships. We could also call love acceptance, respect. There are lots of words that we could use in as a replacement, a socially acceptable replacement to love. We might want approval, appreciation, all of those things. And usually we're looking for all of that from our life, our experiences, our relationships, our career. And eventually, after trying and failing to get those things, to get love from those relationships, from other beings, because as we come to see in awakening, there aren't any other beings. And even if there were, they're not feeling lovable either. So they can't really give us what they don't have, what they don't feel they have, rather, themselves. So when I started to recognize that, I began to really look, there must be a more intelligent, more direct, inexhaustible way to get the love that I need. And it began to become clear that if I am the infinite self, then everything I need must be inside me. And instead, there was a switch over in all of my relationships. Instead of trying to get the love from the outside in, if I be the way you want me to be, you'll love me, was the kind of unconscious bargain I was striking with everyone, and it never really worked because they needed me to be something as well. And it's a push pull all the time. But if I come to that relationship full already, and knowing I am already enough, I am already loved and the source of love, then that's a different experience. It's coming from the inside out. It's coming from the source of love, which is your own self. And most importantly, you're coming and meeting your life without a sense of need. And then your relationships begin to reflect the richness and fullness of your own nature. And you allow that other person in the relationship to not need anything from you either. It's quite wonderful, really. So hope that helps. But again, if you want me to nudge it, please just write back in. Thanks, Karen.
This is from Cher. Hi, I wanted to know how you came up with the word phenomenon.
I don't think I came up with it. It's a fairly common word. It means phenomenon is something that you can experience with your mind or your senses. Maybe you meant the word Noumeno. You might have heard me saying the word Noumeno. Again, I can't take credit for that one. It's been used by a few different spiritual teachers over the years. It's not a very common word, though. It just means, and you can Google it. It's in certain philosophies. Neumenon, dyslexia. Noumenon just means that which is not a phenomenon, that which is not perceivable to the senses, that which is not experienceable, that which is not perceptible to the mind. So if there was an opposite of phenomena, that would be what it is. So both those words you can Google, phenomenon and Noumenon, and see. If you meant something else, please do write back in and let me know. Thanks, Karen.
And this is the final question. Helen, how did you get rid of alcoholism?
Oh, so I have to be honest and say I didn't. It was the I that was struggling with it was separate self, and I realized eventually, after a lot of sort of deep introspection about it, that I was really looking to hide from some feelings, some deep loneliness, despair, and a sense of never really fitting in my life, and many other things. I could spend half an hour talking about the things I was trying to hide from by drinking, and it seemed that that was the way that I coped throughout my late teens, 20s, 30s even. And it really just began to fall away as a dependency as I began to allow what I needed to come from the inside out. So as I saw that I wasn't what I thought I was, and that I was actually something much greater than that kind of opened a doorway to allow a sense of deep love inside to come. Mostly I was drinking to avoid the empty feeling inside. I don't mean the emptiness, I mean this lack of being enough, this total conviction that I was deeply flawed and not good enough as a human being, certainly not good enough to wake up to the truth. On and on it went. Never felt like I fitted in anywhere. There was deep loneliness and pain, which I'm sure is, and despair. And my depression happened during the middle of all of this as well. A deep and long depression, which was actually the beginning of my awakening, looking back. But I never really managed to heal the alcoholism, to get rid of it. It was more that it just fell away when it was no longer, when there was no longer anything to cope or suppress. Then those mechanisms. Same with my overeating, overspending. I had a rather bad eBay habit for a long time, which I'm sure my bank manager was very happy when it finished. But of course, if you need help with that, then there are some amazing 12-step programs, and many beings in the Sangha come from a 12-step program to help actually specifically deal with that. I think that I never quite got to that point of having to seek out that kind of help, because firstly, I was still in denial that I was even dependent on alcohol. I really didn't have a problem as far as I was concerned. Other people disagreed with me, of course. And I discovered meditation right about the time where it got very, very bad. And I realized that what I was actually looking for was the high, the buzz, the escape from the egoic sense of self. And I could get that through meditation much easier, cheaper, and without damaging my body. So I think that in a way saved my life. Of course, then I got addicted to meditation. Certain types of meditation can feel extraordinarily blissful, and produce some extraordinary states of consciousness and experiences. But again, it didn't change my life. Eventually, I had to come and actually look at this type of meditation we're doing here, because I'd come into this very blissful state, and it would last only as long as the kids didn't fight or didn't run out of money or whatever was going on. So I don't think I ever really managed to get rid of it myself, but it just wasn't relevant to the self. The self doesn't need anything. There's nothing for it to, the infinite self, to suppress even. It's in love with every emotion it feels, every thought, every desire, every experience. It's in love with everything because everything is it. Most of all, there was a deep and profound seeing that I was never flawed, never inadequate, could never be less than perfect, less than lovable, less than complete. And with that came a deep and healthy self-esteem, confidence, and perhaps a falling in love with my quirks and oddities rather than blaming myself for them. But as I've said, please, if you do need help with that professionally, please do seek it out. Awakening will solve a lot of our problems in that way. Excuse me. But we shouldn't wait for awakening if we need help with those things. We do whatever we can to help the body and mind as we go along the pathway to realizing who we are. Sometimes that means admitting that we do have a challenge going on, that we need help. So thank you so much, Karen, for answering those. Thank you. And just to wrap this up, if you have a question or a comment that you would like me to answer next time, please feel free to leave a comment underneath this video. And just in case you missed the start, the next one of these will be recorded mid-February because I will be in India for January. So it'll be 2 months before the next one. Usually it's every month, but unless we're away or traveling. So thank you very much for all your intelligent and wonderful questions and insights. And it's been a pleasure to go through these with you. Thank you. Namaste.